Hi, my name is Chris Wolter and I'm a sound designer for games. This is my audio implementation reel for the tongue-in-cheek cyberpunk shooter Sentinel's Revenge, using the Wwise audio middleware and Unity game engine. Here, we play a scruffy, cybernetically augmented humanoid who has to face a variety of foes in a city under full control of the corporate overlords at SynCorp, a massive tech conglomerate that controls every aspect of life in the area. Being set in a dystopian futuristic city, I wanted to focus on building rich urban ambience that surrounds the player in a beautiful cacophony of advertisements, club music, traffic, and ominous public service announcements.
If you believe that you or your loved ones may have received illegitimate hardware, please report to SynCorp immediately for evaluation.
Of course, one can't have a cyberpunk game without crisp-sounding weapons, chunky explosions, and cyborgs with an attitude.
Gotta say, killing you is almost a challenge.
I started this project by setting up my Wwise hierarchy first, letting my design approach be informed by how assets would fit into the systems I had imagined. Using placeholder assets, I dialed in fundamentals like my routing and reverbs before even getting to work on sound design. This approach would also help to greatly reduce friction during the mix later on. From there, I of course headed into Reaper to design all audio assets in 2 rather large projects utilizing NVK workflow and other extensions to help me automate file naming, folder structure, and rendering to different loudness targets that would allow me to pre-mix the game before even touching a fader in Wwise. Throughout the process, I kept track of my work, ideas, and references in Obsidian. I recorded some bespoke Foley for the player character, utilized my modular synth and ARP 2600 library for weapon sweeteners, bass dives, and transients, drew from commercial sound libraries, and brought everything together with loads of editing, layering, and processing using tools like the ones you see on screen. The voices for enemy cyborgs, public announcements, and ads were created using the Soundly Voice Designer text-to-speech engine. Effect chains much like this one were used to achieve a vocal tonality somewhere between GLaDOS in Portal 2 and robotic foes in Doctor Who.
Hostile is not cooperating.
Also notice how cone attenuation serves to inform the player whether an enemy is already facing them by making their voice more directional.
Unauthorized presence detected. Engaging target.
The player character's Foley system responds to velocity, creating a more believable transition from walking to running using a single pool of assets and dynamic control. This is achieved by controlling the volume, pitch, and EQ of footsteps, cloth, leather, and gear movements dynamically based on the player velocity RTPC. The same layers of Foley are also utilized across jumps, weapon swaps, and reloads to add greater believability to the character. With its dense urban environment, this project was the perfect opportunity to get acquainted with Wwise's spatial audio pipeline. I wanted to improve immersion through dynamic early reflections, transmission and occlusion, and rooms and portals, all in an effort to add depth to the soundscape and rein in the sonic onslaught of everything that's happening around the player in ways basic attenuation just couldn't manage. I began by building simplified spatial audio geometry that's a rough representation of the outer walls of the level and street blocks. Then followed rooms and portals for the strip club and other semi-enclosed spaces the player can enter or go through. Using placeholder assets, I then tuned the amount of transmission loss and diffraction on corner buildings and ones bordering passages to avoid any sounds being cut off unnaturally due to being occluded as the player walks past. To optimize performance, I reduced the order of primary and secondary reflections as well as diffraction, and minimized the number of diffraction edges around the levels. Furthermore, only important sounds such as player and enemy weapons, PA announcements, and near explosions would excite early reflections in the first place. After much tweaking of the spatial audio pipeline, sources like public announcements and music emitters now blend seamlessly into the ambience as you walk away from them. For added spatial depth, I created near and far versions of all explosions and enemy weapons, and also designed weapon and explosion tails that blend based on the present environment and distance from the player. All of these utilize blend containers with their crossfade being driven by the distance to player RTPC. Another focus area for me was efficiency. always aiming to minimize voice count and memory utilization via thoughtful instance limiting and an aggressive approach to streaming, where the majority of sounds longer than a second or so would be streamed from disk rather than kept in memory. To keep the overall mix transparent during firefights, I created numerous sidechaining relationships between audio buses and utilized ducking for important sonic cues. For example, the player's weapons will duck ambience as well as player and enemy foley via sidechaining. Explosions, in turn, will duck both player and enemy weapons so they cut through during combat, providing a satisfying reward when you defeat an enemy. Other key feedback, like the voice of the final boss, will temporarily duck both player and enemy weapons as well as explosions, so you don't miss whatever one-liner he's got for you next.
I'm starting to enjoy myself here.
The final boss is also a great example for the amount of mayhem I had to wrangle in the mix, ranging from blowing up transformers to being pelted with rockets and grenades.
Stop wasting my time and let's get this over with. Is that really all you got?
For mastering, I utilized the Wwise mastering suite with gentle EQ taming low and high end slightly, and the multiband compressor adding further glue and balance across the frequency spectrum. Now that that's all said and done, here's a bit more gameplay.
Surrender immediately.
Please make sure to pay any outstanding balances in order to avoid legal and fiscal penalties. For any overdue accounts, SimCorp starting at 45%.
Unauthorized personnel usable.
I was worried someone else got to you first. Is that all you got?
There she is. The little Sentinel who's been getting on everyone's nerves lately. Did you make it all the
Better to enjoy than a refreshing Sentinel. Get one today for only 99 credits.
Do your part to keep the city safe. Report any disorderly conduct or compliance violation to SimCorp immediately.
And that concludes the reel. If you want to see more, be sure to check out the full playthrough via the link in the description. Thank you so much for listening.